Hey guys, welcome back. So last week when I was engulfed in some other cases, I must have missed this one, which happened on Monday, May 10th. Guys, trigger warning, this one gets really weird.
Don't be sad, but the house will be bloody when you get home. Police say 35-year-old Sarah 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� sent that text to her fiancé while he was at work Monday. When he arrived at this apartment in the Lee Hall area, he reportedly saw 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� lying on the bed in the master bedroom. With her, her 10-month-old son, Zell Howard, already dead, her 8-year-old daughter critically wounded. A neighbor says he often heard screaming from the apartment, and police say they've answered several domestic disturbance calls.
From what I could hear when I was upstairs and they were downstairs, that was concerning.
Police say after her arrest, 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� admitted to the stabbings. 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� had a bite mark on her arm, which police say was an attempt by the daughter to get free. 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� also had bruises on her hand and arm. Police say 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� stated they were the result of the way she was stabbing her 2 children with a knife. She was arraigned this morning on murder and other charges and is due back in court next week.
Now, what you're about to hear next is probably one of the best press conferences I've ever heard. And if you listen closely, he says what he thinks may be the catalyst in this whole event.
We addressed some things with the family about an incident that we responded to that occurred last night and that we responded to, and I wanted to make sure that we had everything in place before we went further. And there were some individuals here in our own department that I wanted to check on. So let me just start last night. Around approximately 9:30, officers received a call of a female in distress in the 300 block of Hilltop Drive. Let me start there with the initial call. Dispatch received a call, a woman that was definitely panic, concern. Let me back up. Call from a male who had talked to his fiancée, who was erratic, critical situation. He had received some threats of what he would be coming home to. Officers responded. We immediately made entry into the apartment there in the 300 block of Hilltop Drive. Upon entry, officers, what I would call a horrific scene. There was a 10-month-old and an 8-year-old. The 10-month-old, well, officers first went to both children. I explained to them about the body-worn camera footage, the officers that crossed the threshold and went into that apartment. The things they saw, they will remember for the rest of their careers. 2 children that had suffered multiple stab wounds, a 10-month-old that was pronounced deceased at the scene, and an 8-year-old that was taken to an area hospital and then flown over across the water. The mother of both children, Miss Sarah Whitney 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯����, G-A-N-O-E, was taken into custody and arrested at the scene. She received some medical treatment for some superficial injuries and was brought here to be interviewed. When I was notified, I talked to immediately, before even getting to the scene, I talked to our Commonwealth Attorney, Mr. Howard Gwynn. We had multiple conversations through the night. I wanted him to be briefed on what we had, and he gave me some good advice on some things that I wanted to make sure that we had covered. So I want to appreciate the conversation and relationship that I have with our Commonwealth Attorney's office. When I got to the scene, assistant chiefs were there, officers and detectives, and some citizens that live in the apartment complex there. It's a pretty quiet neighborhood. We don't have a lot of calls for service in that area, but several citizens saw the police presence and were concerned. At this point, the crime scene was established. Forensics was notified. They responded and began to process a very difficult crime scene. Individuals were talked to in the community, and of course the interview took place of Ms. 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯���� back here at headquarters. The father of the deceased arrived at the scene, and he had some family members there with him. We're talking with them now. And the father of the 8-year-old is not in the state currently. Zell Howard, the 10-month-old that lost his life, When the officers responded to both children, they immediately gave aid, trying to talk to both children, to calm them, to reassure them. The compassion they showed was impeccable. Their professionalism, I could not be more proud of and impressed. We talk about health and wellness as 21st century policing, the health and wellness of our officers, how they perform in those critical, stressful situations, whether they're involved or what they see or experience. The paramedics that responded, the forensic technicians and the officers, dispatchers who took the initial call and tried to get as much information and dealt with questions from our own officers back and forth about what they'd be walking into. It was a very, very highly stressful situation. And I cannot be more impressed with the way the officers handled that situation. Again, the paramedics and dispatchers. This morning I met with the assistant chiefs. We had a meeting in this room and talked about some things that will be going forward. There's about 10 to 12 officers that I will mandate. We've already made contact with our department psychologist. It's important. I care about them. I want to make sure that they're okay. And then, of course, we have our CISM that will reach out to every officer that was there, but there's about 12 or 15 that I need to make sure, just because of what they saw and experienced. Officers that have husbands and wives and children of their own. My plan over the next 48 hours is to do a walk in the neighborhood. I also want to talk to the residents who live in that community. I want to make sure that they're okay, children that may live there, families that live there, just to let them know. I'm not seeking, the purpose of that walk will not be to seek information about what happened. It'll be to make sure that they're okay and let that community know that they matter to me, to this department. We also reached out and notified schools. I wanted the school where our 8-year-old to be notified, the principal as well. We have made those contacts. My plan, I met with the detectives this morning. Most of them have been up through the night, have not gone home, and kind of got a brief, kind of put together some history. I'm not going to go too much into that. We'll tell you that we have been to that apartment in the past. After we finish here, myself and Chief Grinstead, we were able to arrange, and I'm going to be able to go over and see her at the hospital. So I plan to leave here, headquarters, and myself and Chief Grinstead will go over to Norfolk, and I just like to put eyes on her. So that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, I could not be more impressed with the paramedics, dispatchers, the first officers on the scene. One of those first officers just graduated our last academy a few weeks ago. But the way we handled the community, addressed their needs and concerns, dealing with the family. One of the family members just called here, and it's best not to do that over the phone. The detective sergeant is going out to talk to them one-on-one, and that will continue. Like I said, Ms. 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯𝒀 was charged with 2 counts of felony child neglect, murder, and then malicious wounding on the little girl at the hospital. But regretfully, Zell Howard was pronounced deceased at the scene. Please.
Chief, what do we know about Ms. 𝑾𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯𝒀? What can you tell us about what led to this, may have led to this, although I know that the investigation's still early. What can you tell us about her?
No, thank you, Andy. So yes, I don't, right now they're piecing a lot of things together. I've reached out to other city agencies that may have some information about the family. Like I said, this just happened last night. There were some things that we had to handle first. Now, this isn't a case that we're actively looking for anyone in this particular crime. Everything was there. The crime scene preserved and weapon that was recovered. But what will take part now is trying to understand why and the history. So those things are ongoing. I will know more this afternoon, but I'll be looking at, I did talk to a couple of the officers last night who have been to that apartment a couple of times already this year on some calls of domestic disturbance type things. But I want to make sure I share that up before I go much further we're talking to some other city agencies now to see if they have any history.
Follow up on that.
Yes, sir.
What were the disturbances? Was it between her and the fiance?
Yeah, I would describe it as just some, you know, without going into, let me say this. For two children to be one to be killed and the other hurt like that, there's obviously issues there. So that will kind of give you an idea what kind of calls we went on.
What can you tell us about the call that Mr. Howard made to his fiance, what she told him,
Yep.
and tell us as much as you can about that
Yep.
call that you got from him?
So without going too much and hurting the case, like I said, I did talk to the Commonwealth attorney last night. He was contacted by his wife through text message. She described a scene that he would see when he came home. Before he got there, he called and talked to a dispatcher. I will tell you that most of that is recorded on that phone conversation. It was very hysteric. And I thought the dispatcher did an amazing job as she tried to ascertain as much information as she could, and then dispatch officers. But he made the phone call before he had gotten into the apartment and even saw what officers saw. It was the text message he received from his wife that prompted him to contact the police
Let
department.
me make sure I'm sure about this. It was a text message that he received,
Yes.
and you had referred to him as wife, her
You know
as
what, I
wife,
should-
as fiance.
Fiance. They are not married at this time, but living together, and have Zell Howard as their child in common.
Right, and they obviously had issues in the past, and that had led to calls to a dispatch to come out. We need help. Come on out here. in the past.
So let me just say, so without hurting any integrity of the case, officers have been to that residence before on domestic, disorderly type calls, some calls of we need assistance. And that's really all I can say at this point. I think we can kind of gather what they were doing there.
Have there been previous calls of those children being hurt or abused in any other way?
We're reaching out to some other city agencies to take a look at that. I don't want to comment on that and get that wrong. That's one of the things that the detectives are working on this morning and this afternoon with other city agencies in our city.
And I know you said the officers were going to be getting, or you were going to be meeting with some of those officers. Are they going to be going through, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but that therapeutic or therapy kind of
Yeah,
thing that you guys have?
officer wellness is very important to me. When we talked this morning, I asked for the names of every officer that went through the threshold into that scene. I also, I'll be reaching out to the fire department, to the two paramedics, and offering the same from the officer who rode in the ambulance with Zell, or with his sister, to the hospital, to the forensic technicians that processed that scene for hours.
How long were officers there at the house?
The call came in around 9:30. I got there around 10. I probably left about a little after 12:30, and I would say officers were there probably well into 2 to 3 this morning.
What did Sarah have to say when police showed up? I mean, she obviously wasn't expecting them, so can you give us any details into that?
You know, I don't know if she was expecting them or not. I know that she had some superficial wounds. We had to get her some treatment, and then she was brought here to be interviewed. So we, of course, read her rights, and I can't go into the comments that she made.
Did she give a statement after
She did talk with detectives, and I can tell you in the text message, and all that would be part of the evidence, but she did describe to her fiance what he would be coming home to.
Did the weapon that she used, can you go into detail? What was it, a kitchen knife? Was it?
No, it was a smaller, about a 2.5 inch pocket knife type weapon.
And we were also told that she might have tried to commit suicide herself. Is there any? Can you confirm that?
I don't want to walk that line yet until I see a full debrief of her interview. My point really today was kind of share what we had. I know there were some rumors floating around. I wanted to try to clear that up. What would be the next steps? The conversations that I've had already with the Commonwealth attorney, and then to really just any death that we respond to, whether it's a homicide, a suicide, an overdose, natural causes, all those are difficult. And we can give officers all the training in the world, but responding to those, we're all human. All those are difficult. But anything dealing with a child is particularly challenging for us in this profession. defenseless children. But I could not be more impressed how they handled themselves and carried themselves in that situation. We checked on them multiple times. Chief Grinstead checked on them multiple times. But I do, the ones that went in, and then we'll do some follow-up. But to answer your question, yeah, we have a tremendous department psychologist. It's important, and for them to get, just to have a session, I need to make sure that they're okay.
What will you be doing in hindsight, not to find fault, but to piece together, were proper procedures followed? Were the warning signs there?
Now,
Was everything done?
let me stop you there, Andy. There's no issue with policy and procedure here. The officers responded to that scene and handled it as professionals I could ever.
I mean,
They
for
gave
previous
textbook.
calls.
So there's laws that we have to follow. There's things, referrals. We have to understand when we deal with particular issues in our community or in individuals, that everything cannot be a police issue. There are multiple agencies, multiple entities that have touch. For me, I will always look back on lessons learned. Is there anything that we could have done more? Is there anything in the future we can do more? But how we handled this was the utmost professional. I saw officers dealing with grandparents last night, and the father of a child who was deceased, and I saw the compassion they gave him. Now, I wish that there was a crystal ball that I knew where to be and how to respond and what time I should get there, but that's just not our world. When we respond to scenes, we can offer treatment. Sometimes we have to mandate it. As more comes out, I think officers who have been there to this location did exactly what they should have.
I was talking about the previous incidents.
That's so am I.
Has she ever been arrested and charged with anything?
So I'm not going to get into her history and her charges or any type of committals. I'm not going to go there now. It's just too early for that to come out. I just ask you to respect that on a couple of things that are still in the works.
The 8-year-old, CHKD, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Zell is little boy.
Zell is a 10-month-old. Zell Howard, yes, ma'am. His father is out of state, but we have made contact with him.
Zell's is
Yes.
out of state.
No. The daughter who is at the hospital, her father is out of state, and we have made contact with him. Pete?
The injuries to the 8-year-old, were they critical or life-threatening? Or?
They certainly were, yes. I will tell you, both of them were stabbed multiple times.
When you say
Multiple times. Multiple.
Where?
Like,
All over their body.
like
I'm not going to go into graph. They were stabbed multiple times. Think about, we're not dealing with an adult body, right? We're dealing with an 8-year-old. Picture that size, a 10-month-old. Any stab wound is critical. They were, like I said, Zell was pronounced dead at the scene by the paramedics. It was very, very touch and go for a while. What I understand now is critical but stable. I'm sure, I can't imagine not only the fear, that the treatment that those children, or that she is going under at the hospital, but it's important for me, even if I'm unable to talk to her, to go see her.
would you say the injuries are still, you said were life-threatening?
So what I can tell you now is that the last update I got, stable but critical, but there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go.
Surgeries? Do we know anything about
I don't want to talk about the medicals. I don't want to say and not be sure. I'm sorry.
So he texts, she texts him.
That's
what you're
correct.
coming home to.
Yes.
He calls 911.
That's correct.
Are we able to get a recording of the 911?
Not right now. Like I said, we're not even 24 hours into this. All those things have to be looked at. I want to share that with the Commonwealth Attorney, and I don't want to release anything until Mr. Gwynn and the Commonwealth Attorney approve. So I know that when I talked with him last night, he wanted to make sure that he was able to handle it first thing this morning. But she was here well into the morning being interviewed.
And she's now at
Yes.
Newport News
Yes.
Detention Center?
Yes.
Newport News Detention Center. When the attacks were taking place on the two children, did neighbors hear anything that made them call 911 as well?
I don't.
Hey, something's going
Right.
on.
That's certainly one of the calls that we made last night was going around talking to individuals that were there. I saw 2 or 3 neighbors who lived close proximity, and they said that they did not hear anything. I don't believe that we got any other calls for service other than the father of Zell calling.
Were the children found in any type of condition where they had something around their mouth so that they would not be able to
No,
scream? or
no,
anything like
I don't want to. I'm not going to go too much into crime scene and what it looked like. We were there a long time processing.
Can you just say where in the house it was? Bedroom, living room?
Bedroom.
One bedroom?
Was it the bedroom that the children were
I just,
shared? Or?
all I know at this point is bedroom. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into that.
You called it a horrific scene. Obviously, parent, anybody
Yes.
watching this today is thinking, oh my gosh, how could somebody do this to their children? What do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
say about that?
It's funny that I've had multiple people who work here in this building just tell me they want to go hug their kid today, their child. So I think that's good advice for everyone. I don't know that there's any words. I just think that we value life. They're a gift, and maybe we all just take a step back and take a breath.
Was there anything in her past, a ritualistic thing or anything like that that would have led to this?
And it's a good question. I know that was one of the theories I did hear about a little bit last night that they were talking about, but I have not gone down that road. That'll probably come out 2 or 3 days later, if that. I mean, that's where the crest of everything is now. I need those detectives to go home and get some sleep. Several of them are still here when I got in this morning, but past history, those are things that we'll be looking at as we go
And
forward.
when I use the word ritualistic, just to further define it, things along the lines of witchcraft is what you are.
I'm tracking with you, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not sure what all history is there. That's some things that we're looking into.
Did she give any, like in her statement, she gave a voluntary statement, did she give any explanation at all as to?
I don't want to hurt anything. I don't want to go into any statements, anything that was recorded, anything that she said at the scene or her interview here. I don't want to do anything like that to jeopardize.
When you all
I know
showed
that
up,
she
where
did
was
talk with police. I can tell you that.
I'm sorry.
I was just saying she
How
did.
long she spoke with them? Like, was it a brief statement or? did
She
have-
talked. We talked to her there at the scene, of course. Made sure that we made sure we got her treatment, and then brought her here. But she was here for a while.
When you say a while, you're talking about
She was here for a while.
hours?
I'm not going to. She was here for a while.
Where was she when you all arrived at the apartment?
She was inside. I don't want to go into much more than that. And I'm not trying to short. I just
Appreciate all you're doing, Chief.
Zell and his sister.
You had said that she,
Zell and his sister deserve the integrity and respect of this case. I'm
you
sorry.
had said that she was injured also in this,
Yeah, she had some superficial wounds that she was treated and released.
and she was the only one in the building. She was the only other adult in the.
Yeah, we're not looking for anyone else in this case.
She was there with the two children when, to Rob's question about superficial wounds, still, the defensive, that they were fighting back?
There's a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old and their mother.
Did she confess, like, I know you have the evidence, you have the text messages, but did she say yes? Did she confess to it?
So I talked to the Commonwealth attorney last night. We had a very clear understanding. We take our direction on what's released and not released and comments. I'm not going to comment. I cannot and will not jeopardize this case by any comments that she made during the interview or at the scene. I cannot do that. That will all come out through the investigation. I will not do that. My respect for Mr. Gwynn, the Commonwealth attorney, and what they do. I can't do that.
But you have acknowledged that we do have the evidence of the text of what she
Yes.
sent to the
We do have-
fiancé.
we do have
Hey,
evidence.
this is what you're coming home to, and it's really
Yes,
bad.
that prompted him, I believe wholeheartedly, that prompted him to make the call to the police department before he even got home. Okay? Does anybody else have anything?
Chief, thank you.
No, thank you.
Just one more time, the name of the spelling of Sarah,
Oh, yes, sir. I apologize. Sarah Ganoe, G-A-N-O-E, and I pray that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Like I said, Zell, Howard was
ELL.
Z-E-L-L, yes.
H-O-W-A-R-D?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the 8-year-old, we're not reporting her name, but they were stepbrother and stepsister.
They are, yes, that's correct. Same mother, different fathers.
So she's at the Newport News City Jail now?
She wa- she
I
wa-
called down there, they said, oh no, we don't.
She was just booked, so we haven't booked and phone her now.
Yeah, she was.
We'll
We
send
had.
it to you.
Remember, she had to get treatment and released, and then brought here and interviewed. So all that took a while. Like I said, it was when I got here this morning, she was still here.
What time was that?
Early this morning. I'm not punching a clock yet, Peter. Help me out a little bit.
What
But,
time was she arrested?
So she was taken into custody immediately when officers responded.
Okay.
Then, of course, detectives were called to the scene, but we wanted to make sure, like I said, she had, first priority was the 2 children, to get her treatment, and the officer that rode with the little girl to the hospital, I just cannot be more impressed.
She doesn't have any other children, does she?
That I know of, I don't know at this point.
There
There were no other children there.
No other children in the house.
And like I
no
said,
adults.
there's some of the questions you asked, they're very good questions. I just don't have all the answers. But there are some things floating around out there that I just wanted to be open and transparent as much as I could to share with you what I can. But there's still a lot of work, to do.
She was the only adult in the house at the time, right?
When we entered,
I mean, yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank
Chief,
you all.
thank you. As always, your transparency is
Thank you,
very
sir.
appreciated.
I don't want to mess anything up.
This story really makes me sick. And thank you for watching, because I know it's triggering. What would compel a mom to do this? And do you think the witchcraft stuff has anything to do with it? You guys know, I have questions.